Saar, welcome. I should say welcome back because you came here to present at Hardwired
4 years ago.
4 years ago.
We had 20 people back then, and looks like you quadrupled at least. So
yes, the audience and also your company, right? So you were an early stage company, and you guys have been killing it by the sound of it. And so you most recently raised a Series C round of financing led by Insight right here in town, and also a strategic round from Qualcomm.
correct.
Not that fundraising is the most important thing, but it's a nice milestone. And speaking of number of people, I read somewhere that you are now about 100 people.
Yeah.
Okay, which is 50 in New York and 50 in Israel.
Correct. So our product engineering is in Israel, and sales, marketing, customer success are here, mostly in New York, but in the U.S.
And actually, we'll talk about this later. I'm always fascinated by those sort of bicontinental models, but maybe we can talk about the team. So I guess just to jump into it, tell us about the product. What do you guys do?
Sure. And before we go into it, some of you are asking what is it that I have on my face? And we are, as a company, we're pushing Movember. Who's heard of Movember before? So Movember stands for Mustache November, where it's a nonprofit organization that promotes men's health issues. And as a company, we're dealing in the manufacturing space, which is heavily male-dominated. And this is part of kind of the cause is to promote men's health in our market. So every business meeting, we start with a full minute to talk about statistics.
Is that right? Every meeting?
Sorry?
Every meeting?
We have a slide in our pitch deck that begins on Movember, and if you want, go online to Movember.com, search for Team Augury, where you can donate to the cause.
Very good. All right.
So what do we do?
Yeah, what do you do other than growing mustaches?
Cool. So when we started Augury, it's actually pretty creepy now in the office, by the way. When we started Augury, it was 8 years ago, my co-founder and I, we had a very kind of clear vision of where we're going, and that is to build a world where people can always rely on the machines that matter. And the machines that matter is the key phrase, right? For our customers, and again, today we're mostly in the manufacturing space, the machines that matter are the critical machines on the production line, right? So the filler that fills the cans, the bottles with beer, right? But when you take a step back and you look at greater society, everything we do relies on machines, right? So the power, electricity, and running water, and the medicine that keeps us healthy all relies on machines, and we're here to make them more reliable and more productive. So the way we do it is we basically listen to machines, and based on the noise that they make, we can tell you what's wrong with them.
Yeah, the old analogy, and I'm sure that's no longer accurate, but was Shazam for industrial machines.
Correct. So my marketing people told me to stop using that, so we can't. But no, today we are a full stack company, which means that everything from our own hardware that we design in-house through the connectivity layer and diagnostics algorithms we design and run. We do everything under the same roof. And we work with the biggest manufacturers out there. So I won't name them because this is on video, but you can imagine the biggest food manufacturers and CPG and pharmaceuticals and whatnot. We're working with them to transform how they operate and make their production lines more productive.
And what does full stack mean?
To us, full stack means that we're able to be very focused on the customer's problem, right? And align the whole company to solve it. Now, today in the market, you have sensor companies that don't have AI or machine learning, and then you have AI companies that don't have hardware. And we are the only company to really bridge the two. Now, when we started, we used to say that we are a data analytics company that happens to have hardware. That's how we pitched it to you back in the Series A. And over time, we've learned that this is actually our biggest differentiator, right? So the fact that our hardware designers sit in the same room with our algo developers means we have very quick feedback loops. And when we designed this, which is our second generation of hardware, we incorporated 5 years worth of learnings and data that we've collected into this version, into the hardware.
And so full stack. So you got the software, you got the hardware. It sounds like you guys had to solve the connectivity problem as well. So if you try to extract data or have listen to machines and produce data on the factory floor. Factory floors are notoriously difficult to connect to the internet because it's hot and it's humid. And right. So you have a product now, Halo, is that correct?
Yeah, so this is Halo, as we call it.
This is Halo. Okay.
Yeah, we basically have two components. This is what we call the endpoint. Each one of these blue boxes has multiple types of sensors, including vibration and temperature, and a magnetic sensor that measures magnetic emissions from a motor and can detect electrical faults. And then, so we physically super glue these on the machines. And then we have another gateway that sits in the room.
You super glue them. There's no
physically super
retrofitting or anything. You just.
We come, we super glue, we scan a QR code, and we're good to go, right? So we took all the concepts of the smart home and kind of consumer IoT and brought them into, from the simplicity perspective, brought them into the industrial world. So we have this component, and then we have the gateway that sits in the room. And they connect over Bluetooth Low Energy, and then the gateway connects over Wi-Fi or cellular, depending on the facility, the infrastructure.
And what do you use for cell? Are you guys LoRa focused or what?
No. So our gateway is Wi-Fi or Ethernet, and then if we need, we just put a cellular router, a Verizon cellular router, in the room and provides Wi-Fi for the whole facility.
And do you send data to the internet on in batches, or is that a continuous thing?
In batches. So we record every hour. It takes roughly 1 megabyte per machine recording. So you could imagine if we have, let's say, 1,000 machines, we have much more, but let's say 1,000, that means we upload 1 gigabyte worth of data every hour, which ends up being a lot of data that we ingest in our cloud.
So it's all cloud-based. So you have your sensor, and the sensor sends the data, and the analysis happens in your cloud.
Correct. So everything is in our cloud, on Google Cloud platform. We are looking into edge computing. It's a question we get asked a lot. Mm-hmm. The hidden trade-off that nobody talks about in edge computing is that if you do all the computation on the edge and you don't have the raw data, you're not able to do any further research. So if you, as an example, if you do feature engineering and extract the features on the edge, and then you have a new idea for and you never send the raw data, and you have a new idea for a feature, you can't do the research and you can't really train the algorithm. So you lose the ability to innovate.
Interesting. But as of now, so you don't have edge computing, so you send the entire data.
Correct. We're sending all the data, and going back to the point earlier about the hardware and diagnostics sitting together, we're working on our kind of second generation of Halo, of the connected, kind of a lower cost version, and that will do the edge analytics on the endpoint. Mm-hmm. Because we've already amassed so much data that we're fine with lowering the raw data that we take.
Mm-hmm. And since part of the idea of this event is to, collectively learn from people's experiences, so on the product front, was there anything that surprised you that turned out to be more difficult than expected? I'm guessing there's a bunch of things, but perhaps things that turned out to be not as much of a problem as you would have thought as well?
So when I was here 4 years ago, I did a presentation around how do you combine lean startup and hardware development. And the whole idea of MVPing hardware was really foreign back in those days. I think that over time, we got much better in the industry, and the tools have gotten much better in it. And that turned out to be easier. So the second generation was easier and faster to produce and get to market than the first one. And I think the main learning, we'll talk about maybe AI later, but there's this chicken and egg that if you don't have data, you don't have any algorithms. So you can't provide any value to customers. So you don't have customers, you don't have any data. How do you go about solving that problem? That took us roughly 2 years of building our own data set and standardizing our own data set and from the ground up building it, which turned out to be our biggest competitive advantage today.
And on the hardware front, where do you build those?
Today we're still in China, manufacturing in China, but we're moving out of China due to the tariffs and all the recent changes.
Mm-hmm. And is that a high volume production thing? I would assume in industrial IoT you probably need less. Is that correct? And is China still a great option if you need a comparatively smaller production batch?
So putting aside tariff, the recent changes which hiked the prices by 25-26%, we found China to be better than what you locally find here on quality, not just on scale and volume. Even 3D printing in China, you get back better quality than you would find, generally speaking, you can find here and quicker turnaround rates.
And do you work with a partner, a service partner in China, or do you have staff that's basically sitting in the factories all the time?
We do not. We have a turnkey manufacturer that runs all our quality control. We've built our own quality control systems, our jigs, basically with our own software that tests the hardware. And by now we have very high yield, and it's just a kind of, we send an email, we need this amount of product shipped by this date, and it just appears on our doorstep. And
all of it is manufactured and packaged in the same place? Or maybe packaging doesn't matter.
So electronics is in one facility and shipped to the final assembly where they also do the plastics. So, yeah.
And just out of curiosity, I'm always fascinated by that part of the hardware business. How did you go about finding that initial partner in China initially when you were just starting?
We worked with a design shop. Initially, we did the kind of mechanical design. We outsourced it in a design shop that had all these relationships. Over time, we hired our own designer that has the experience and has all the connections that are needed. And by now, we have kind of a head of operations that knows how to build this whole supply chain, not just manufacturing.
What's a great head of operations for something like this? Is that somebody who's been doing this for 30 years or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So experience, it's all about experience.
Yeah, because when you think about it, hardware isn't new to the world. IoT maybe, or connected hardware is newer, but hardware has existed for decades, and there are people and companies, more traditional companies, that have struggled with the same challenges that we have today and have a lot of experience doing so.
Great. All right, so let's switch to the AI part of this. So how does this work? So it's deep learning based, presumably. You're still, even though you're no longer Shazam, you're still listening, right? So it's an audio signal that you analyze through deep learning?
Yeah, so again, we have different data sources. We have our own hardware sensors, which are vibration, temperature, and magnetic. And then over time, we've also started integrating the existing data set that is on the production line. So from the main controllers of the kind of manufacturing systems.
How hard is that to get that data? Is that pretty available? I mean, do those machines have APIs of some sort, or? So
we're currently dabbling in it, and I think this is our main, not just ours, but the whole industry's main challenge. The reason being that there are different data sets, different OEMs, different manufacturers of kind of the production machines, and you need to aggregate it, you need to sanitize it, synchronize it, and then it's customized per facility, so it's very hard to learn from one facility to the other, right? So we do it today on a one-off basis with customers together, our data scientists working with their kind of SMEs, their subject matter experts, to solve a specific problem they have and then scale it out. And I mentioned earlier there are kind of AI companies that work on the operational data that exists, and their main challenge is it takes 8 months just to get going. Just to take the data and start building, sanitize and start building models, whereas we come in because we standardize our data set, we super glue the sensors, and within 2 weeks we tell you what's wrong with your machine.
And is that across any machine? Or you need to have had this device on a machine. You learn about that machine. Then when you go to the next customer, you can figure out, or you know that they already have a machine that is comparable to the one you analyzed previously.
So most of the machines are fairly simple. Pumps, fans, compressors, and then even the more complex ones are driven by motors and gearboxes and maybe belt systems or whatnot. So for the driven equipment, we can give you out-of-the-box diagnostics. And then for the more complex machinery, we are focused on 5 specific segments for that reason, right? So we provide 80% coverage in bottling lines, in beverage as an example.
Sorry, in what?
Bottling lines.
And bottling.
So breweries and Pepsi and other.
So 80% coverage of the type of machines that one would have in a bottling line.
Correct. And then for pharmaceuticals and food and paper mills and whatnot as well.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. Meaning, so you have the data and you have models which are specific to that type of assembly line. Okay.
Correct. And, in a sense, we have more data on a bottling line than the biggest manufacturer of bottling lines has, because they don't record or collect that data today. And that is also part of our model. As an example, we're working with the largest pump manufacturer in the world, and their goal is to move from selling pumps to selling water as a service, charge per gallon of water. And we're basically building their whole IoT stack from sensing to diagnostics, because we have so much data on pumps. We have kind of better algorithms than they do today.
What does a team look like from an AI perspective? Is that, are you guys doing fundamental research, or is that more of a question, an equally difficult question of doing applied AI to, I guess, customize the models per industry?
So we have data engineers that work on the back end. We recently launched our 3rd generation of our architecture, so we redid the whole thing.
So that was fun?
It was nerve-wracking when you flip the switch. We have data scientists, which are more algo developer, or all of them have PhDs or master degrees in electrical engineering, computer science. And then we also have domain experts, so reliability engineers, vibration analysts, kind of like the machine doctors, where in this case where the algorithm confidence level isn't high enough, we send it to the human expert, and they help us tag the data and feed it back into the algorithm.
And to the human point, like how much, well, I guess, how do you think about services, right? Like those are industries that, historically have not been as sort of software focused, and, you mentioned full stack, presumably expect that you're going to solve all their problems. So you need to send people there, or is that a necessary evil?
So today first of all, we're a SaaS company. So even though we have hardware, we give it away for free and charge per machine per year for the diagnostics and kind of services. When you look at enterprise companies across the board, then the market shows that 15% of revenue should come from professional services, because it creates a much stickier relationship and enables you to expand quicker. We're not quite there yet, but we do plan to expand that over the next year or so.
To expand to do more services? Or?
To sell, so we give away services that we could charge for.
Oh, you want to charge them at cost or something?
And the customer is okay paying for them, so why not also charge for them? The challenge there is, especially in our market, and going back to what I said about operational data being very specific, how do you make sure that you don't become a project company? Mm-hmm. And we remain a tech platform. That is kind of the slippery slope we need to navigate.
Very interesting. All right, so maybe just last couple of questions from me, and then we'll open up to people. Want to spend a little bit of time on the go-to-market aspect of this. So Sean had a great presentation right before this at BV around distribution. How do you go to market? Is that like a sales-driven account executives type sell? Do you work with partners? How do you do it?
So we're actually in the midst of a shift now. the market is changing. I don't know how many of you know the industrial market, but this whole digital transformation theme is taking shape, and the type of solution that we provide is going up to the boardroom. So we started selling to facilities, plant managers, maintenance managers, and then director of reliability, and now VP of engineering and manufacturing, all the way up to chief digital officer and chief supply chain officer. And as such, our sales motion needs to change, not just sales, but go-to-market motions. And we shifted to an account-based approach, meaning we work on a smaller number of accounts, but much more focused on them, and much tighter collaboration between marketing and sales. So we are still very heavy, kind of outbound heavy, SDRs opening the doors, but we're also kind of tying the marketing motions inside. And then the second piece, as we go higher and we want to get leads from kind of VPs and C-level, we understand that we need to work more with the ecosystem. So the McKinseys and Gartners are obvious channel partner, not channel, but partners. And then also the big tech platforms like Microsoft and SAP and others that are already having these conversations, and we can fill a big gap that they have in their portfolio today.
Interesting. So the ideal partner is a consulting firm or Microsoft, as opposed to, Sean was talking about the distribution companies or water quality, which are industry specific or specific to his industry. So in your case, that's more the McKinseys of the world, as opposed to a industrial specific sort of distributor. Right.
So you have system integrators that are more on the kind of production line of factory automation, kind of the traditional automation, and they typically have relationships on the facility level. Now, we actually had an initiative in discovering to start working with the system integrators end of last year. It didn't pan out. And one thing that we've learned, before you turn on a distribution channel, you need to really wait till there is pull from the market. Because what we do today is a lot of vision selling, a lot of uphill battles, and we're good at it. We have our playbook, and we're seeing kind of good conversion rates and repeatability, but it's very hard to train a VAR, a value-added reseller, to do the same. And for a seller, kind of one of their reps, they would always go to the easier sell, and they can go back to selling what they've done in the last decade. So why should they kind of do the hard work? So that didn't pan out for us.
Interesting. So what do your reps look like then? So if what you're saying is that you can't have your standard distributor do the sale because it's a more consultative, complicated sale, what kind of profile do you recruit for an AE?
So early on, we had a debate. Do we want to bring our kind of VP sales, VP revenues that comes from the market, has kind of all the contacts and plays golf and kind of shakes hands? And we decided to bring a sales leader that knows how to build modern sales stacks, right, and teams and engines, and then have the AEs come from the market. And this is how we build our team. Today, as we move higher up kind of the chain, and we need to add more senior talent, we're looking to people that sold to similar customers. So who sells to industrial manufacturing, maybe ERP systems. There are similar technologies that are being sold on a corporate level that we can leverage that talent base.
Great. Maybe just to close, so you are I guess you fall in the category of industrial IoT, AI, SaaS, all the things, but probably industrial IoT. Where do you think we are on that cycle? So, IoT, especially the consumer side of IoT, was really the hot thing in 2014, 15, 16 type thing, and that the consumer side really cooled down. It seems that the industrial and B2B side of things is much more resilient, although it's more quiet. Where do you think we are in this cycle?
So, we've been at it for a while now, and we've heard the promise of next year it will come multiple times, and I actually believe next year it will come. Trust me. But as a result, you don't see a lot of industrial startups with traction. And it's a well-known issue that 80% of corporates have a digital strategy, and only 5 or 6% of them are actually succeeding and going out of pilots and into rollouts. And for whatever reason, because we spent more time at it, we have the hardware's AI kind of full stack mix, we're actually seeing really good traction. And if you couple the macroeconomics, talk about recessions coming in, and you look at kind of the VC landscape shifting more to profitability and less growth due to IPOs that weren't successful.
Not this building, the building next door.
Then I actually expect most of the kind of startups that started in the last 3 years in the industrial market not to really be with us in a year or so.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Do we have questions? Oh, we have questions, but we don't have microphones.
Yes. Scarcity.
So when you do the manufacture in China, do you do an NDA?
Yeah, we do have NDA, and there's a lot of talk, or when we started kind of looking into it, about IP theft and whatnot in China. Our kind of philosophy is that the core of what we do is not in the hardware, it's in the algorithms, and that is very hard to replicate because you can call it a trade secret, it's behind closed doors. So we're not as concerned about, obviously we keep tabs on what they do and NDAs and whatnot, but we're not as concerned about IP theft on the hardware side, more so on the diagnostics and algorithm side.
Got a question here. I think maybe you should keep the mustache. I think it's a good. Yeah.
Tell that to my wife.
So I noticed that you have some investors who do a lot in the manufacturing space, like Formation 8 that went into Eclipse, and then you have a strategic. I'm curious how they've impacted your business, in terms of the model and the strategy, and if they've helped you get into the market, or what's been the impact of having those kind of specialist investors?
Tremendous. In general, the last decade of venture capital, and FirstMark is a big pioneer of this, has been VCs as a service, not as kind of a financial institute. Our first seed round was with FirstMark Capital and Lair Hippo Ventures, and they've been a tremendous help for us to build a seed round, a seed and Series A stage company and onwards. Eclipse came in and they have the best hardware plus AI combination experience. Munich Re, which are also on the Helium board with you, they know the industrial market better than anyone. And recently, Inside Ventures take companies into kind of growth stage. So we've been fortunate to be able to select our investors, and we have a very diverse group of people on our board that really help us on the strategy, not just financials.
Some other questions?
Are vendors of automation technology, such as a PLC, like Siemens, more potential competitors or sales partners, channels for you?
Both. The large companies are large, and typically one business unit doesn't know what the other is doing. And sometimes they're fine competing and partnering at the same time. We are actually working with the bigger industrial companies on partnering. What we find when you look at kind of the industrial IoT platforms, most of them are horizontal plays, right? I will come in, connect all the data, and then provide some value. And we are a very vertical solution. We do machine health, kind of plug and play, and that resonates really well with them because we don't want to do logistics. We don't want to compete with an ERP. We don't want to do a maintenance management system. That's not what we're about, but we can tie into them and provide new types of value that today they cannot provide to the customers.
Sure. So you mentioned earlier that you wanted to be a tech platform versus like a project company. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Going again to the AI and operational data companies, I'll talk about it ourselves. When When we started, we spent 2 years self-funded because we wanted to really prove the technology works and there is a market for it. So we built the first proof of concept and then also did the customer development. We had a pilot agreement on the table for $20,000 annual, which is a lot of money when you have nothing, when you're self-funded. And it was at a CNC factory that manufactures jet engine blades. And what we understood is that if we go into this factory, we need to sit there and sleep on the floor for 2 years, build a specific algorithm for them. And then right next door, there was another CNC factory that also manufactured jet engine blades, owned by the same parent company, but they have different machines and they're customized differently. And we weren't able to take our learning from facility A and bring it to facility B. And this is what you see across the industry today. Most of the AI companies are mostly around project-based. You can even look at Accenture and IBM in a sense. This is what they do. They sell you 30 data scientists to go solve your problem. Now, if we want to diagnose every machine that has moving parts, we can't afford to do that. That's not our vision. That's not what we're here for. So how do we make sure that we add that 10 to 15% of professional services and maintain our core technology, core IPs and technology?
Thank you, Jack. Cool. So that's all the time we have. This was fantastic. Congratulations on all the progress over the last few years. Really impressive, and it's also really cool that you're doing this in New York, and Israel. But doing what you do is hard. There's lots of moving pieces. You need to be great at AI. You need to be great at hardware. You need to be great at sales. So it's really impressive. Very excited for everything you guys have done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.